Kane Power. Do you think at the beginning of my show here that you think people grunt along with me in their cars?
Yeah, dude.
You think so?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you think there's people grunting across America? In fact, we should have a initiative called Grunting Across America. And
dude, it's worldwide.
I can lead it. Oh God! All right, here we go. Let's go. Let's just start before it gets too stupid. Oh my God! Sometimes you can pull a muscle if you grunt too much like that. But welcome everyone to the Podcast Engineering Show. My name is Chris Kerr, and I produce podcasts for a bunch of companies, and I also teach podcast engineering school, which is the only place you can really learn how to produce podcast audio at the highest professional level. I have a background in the music business and audio engineering, and this show, we really go deep into podcast audio production. And if you implement the best of what you learn here, your podcasts will sound a lot better and you'll spend less time producing them. And I really believe that you can produce really great sounding audio. I really do. Even if you're not an audio engineer, whatever, whoever you are, wherever you are, I don't care. If you pick up some fundamental techniques and tips and stuff, you can really produce some good sounding audio. And that's what I love. Because what I don't love is listening to podcasts that sound horrendous. Kane Power is here. I'm going to introduce you right now, Kane, because, first of all, you're in New Zealand, and you're an audio engineer, and your last name is Power. Dude, how powerful is that? Oh, come on. So
come on, Chris.
And also, Austin Powers is Powers, but your name's Power with no S. So see,
that's
you're
right.
A little more legit there. So your company is Precision Podcasting, which is at precisionpodcasting.com. And I'm psyched that you're here, brother. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yeah, I'm totally psyched to be here, dude. As I said, I'm a fan of the show. So it's great to have a chat.
And Barry's here. He just held up his hand. I mean, I've never seen Barry hold up his hand in his life. Barry, what do you want to say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's all you wanted to say to Kane Power?
Oh, forget it.
I mean, I know it's Kane Power here, but all right, Barry. All right, he's taking more notes. All right, he's okay. Let's get back to the episode. So let's start with the speed round. We want to know from you, Kane, when you're. Oh, by the way, do you host any podcasts?
Yeah, man, I do. I host a very neglected podcast called Musician's Map, but I'm just in planning. I've done 50-something episodes, but I haven't done anything in ages, but I am in planning to get it back off the ground, and I've got a couple of series in mind for Musician's Map. So yeah, I do one. Okay,
sweet. So then let's pretend you're gonna record an episode of Musician's Map. And take us through, your equipment and your work, your signal chain, and then your post-production workflow. Take us through the whole process from your mic all the way through the signal chain and everything. And take us through it pretty quick, because then we'll spend the rest of the episode picking through it.
Okay, man. Yeah, sounds good. Well, if I was going to record a Musician's Map episode, I've got a SM7b from Shure, pretty classic podcaster's microphone. I am using a Universal Audio Apollo Twin as my interface. It's Thunderbolt into my 2014 MacBook Pro. And I use Pro Tools to record. And yeah, that's pretty much how I'd go about getting my raw recording for a Musician's Map episode. Now, if I was talking to other people, depending if it was online, I'd probably use, something like Squadcast or Zoom. But I have been known to use Skype in the past, which is awful. And if we're in person, I just have my Apollo. Sometimes if I'm traveling or something, I use my wife's Focusrite Scarlett as a little easy USB interface. It's pretty basic, man. Don't need much more than that.
All right, cool. And then take us through the post-production workflow.
Yeah, post-production. Well, I mean, I work on quite a few shows as well, so it kind of just depends on what you use. But I do have kind of a standard signal chain that I'll put on pretty much everything, and then I've got a few commonly used plugins as well. Before everything goes the RX7 Spectral De-noise, which is probably the best plugin that I use, I think, and most important. And then I've used the Waves EQ3 7-band EQs, as many as I need. Just stock standard Waves plugin. I use the Waves Vocal Writer, and then I will usually additionally compress with the Universal Audio, the Teletronix LA-2A. And that's usually going into, after that I'll have a Waves De-esser and a RX7 mouth declicker. And to finish it all off, I usually have a Maxim peak limiter. And depending on the show and how many instances of plugins I need, I might send my audio to an aux bus, or maybe just to the master fader. Other plugins that I commonly use, the Pultec EQ Legacy EQ, really amazing EQ. I quite often use the Softube saturation, which is an output distortion, as a really kind of soft sort of distortion. And I quite often use the Universal Audio, the UA610B, which is a tube preamp simulator. And sometimes I'll monitor with the Youlean Loudness Meter, but it's pretty rare. And then whatever else I need.
Right? Yeah.
Did you get that?
Yeah. So you get like that's what happens, right? Us engineers and podcast producers, we accumulate lots of plugins, and we don't always use all of them every day. Yeah,
I have so many, but yeah. Anyway,
well, we're gonna have to do. You know what we'll do, Kane? If you're up for it, we can do. I'm starting to do some streams on Twitch where I meet with the guests, like I meet with people like you on video, and then you can actually share your screen and show us and all your your software and your plugins and stuff, and then.
Yeah.
And in that situation, I would actually want to sort of just go through the whole the whole list of everything you have, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right, cool. And then you mix down and obviously create the MP3. So do you export out of Pro Tools as an MP3?
Yeah, I do. So it's got the MP3 option that you just tick. So I export as WAV and MP3. I deliver both.
Oh, sweet. And okay. And are most of the episodes you're producing for clients, are they mono episodes or stereo episodes?
Most of them are stereo because they have intro and outro music. So I'm kind of, I prefer stereo imaging when I have stereo files in the session. So yeah, pretty much everything I'll put out is stereo. Okay,
cool. Yeah, I produce some shows that I put out in stereo, and others I actually do put them out in mono, even though even though the intro music is stereo music, it gets collapsed down to mono, which is fine. But it's funny, the show that I produce that's the most popular is one of the ones that we put out in mono, and
yeah,
so in reality, it just depends on the attitude of the podcaster in terms of how they feel about file size, I guess, right? That's what it comes down to, file size.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, look, like if you're putting out a show like 20,000 hertz or something, that's a stereo show, right? They're often using panning and effects during their show. If you're putting out any other show, it's probably going to be fine as a mono show. It's just kind of my practice. Just sort of from all my years in engineering, I just sort of automatically go to stereo unless it is, a true mono session.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. It's because I'm my mindset is that I don't mind the extra file size. I mean, the files aren't that big anyway. It's not like someone's going to try to download the episode and their phone is going to say, "Sorry, you're out of space." Like that's never going to happen. So.
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm of the camp. I export my MP3s at 192. And I know some people are, getting right down to the lower kind of resolutions, but I like to go as high as I can, with kind of still considering file size and bandwidth for people. But ultimately, we're at a point now where people have high speed internet readily available on their phone. Like if you can't stream 96 or 192, like I don't know, man, everyone can, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So with all that being said, though, I also understand the other side of the argument that, hey, nothing wrong. Put it out in mono, have much smaller file size. That's also fine too. So
yeah.
But dude, that's pretty badass. Putting out MP3s in stereo at 192 kbps.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Oh God, I love it. Let's start putting out WAV files. What do you say, Kane?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah,
32-bit, 192 kilohertz.
No, now you're getting crazy.
Yeah, now an hour episode would be what is an hour long piece of audio that's in stereo, 32-bit, 192. I wonder if anyone knows the. Yeah, I'd love to know the answer to that. I mean, I could figure it out myself, but we're recording right now, so I can't do it right now. But right, how big is one file that's 1 hour like that? I wonder. All right,
that's the dream. That's
Neil Young's podcast. He's putting it out. Yeah, it won't even fit on a DVD. That's how big the file is. All right. Who has DVDs anymore? Why did I even say that?
Do you have DVDs still?
Well, at home we do. We watch them. And actually there's a cool store here in town, Colorado Springs, that it's like a used DVD store, but it's so huge. It's like the size of a small Walmart, but all it is, it's just all movies. It's like, so what I'm saying is for a movie store, it's huge. And like, you just go walk through there, you get movies for like $3, $4, $5. And it's okay. They're DVD. They might not be, Blu-ray, but you're going to, even if you rent it on Amazon, that's $4 or $5 or $7 even sometimes.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, that's a little movie buying update from Chris. Thank you for, I hope you enjoyed that segment of the program. So let's get back to your speed round. You're using an SM7b, and so let's, I think we all know that the SM7b is a great mic. Well, actually, one note about the SM7b, I recently did a few episodes with my SM7b, and then I was testing some mics, and I tried it again. I don't know. My SM7B may be like slightly defective or something because it sounds so muffled and like muddy and not clear on my voice. Like it sounds like something's wrong with the mic, but I have no way to test that. So I don't know what to do.
What are you using now? Electro Voice, say.
Yeah, right now I'm using my new RE20 on an angle from the side. I've been trying all kinds of different mics and mic placements recently, just for the hell of it, because actually the reason is because the vintage RE20 I was using, I think it might be putting out a little static out of the output, so I might have to get that looked at and fixed. But so I'm trying all different mics.
Yeah, that's fun.
It's fun, and it's I mean, it is what it is, right? We're just trying mic. Here's the problem though, like. So normally a podcaster will have the same setup for every show. Like a lot of listeners of this show, like they have their mic, they know that they always have it plugged into the same gear. They have their levels all set. Everything is literally the same. And that way, in post-production, they can apply the same EQ, the same compression, and everything will pretty much sound exactly the same. So one thing about trying different microphones, yeah, it's fun and all that, but when I go to mix one of my episodes, now I got to spend a bunch of time EQing and, leveling and like, it's not a ton of time, but it's like processing someone's voice from scratch. It just takes more time. And I'm like, so that's kind of a bummer, but I mean, it's something I like doing, obviously, but.
Yeah. I get it, man. Like I've had this SM7B for, it's relatively new. It's like 3 or 4 months old. So I'm still playing around with it, trying to figure out where it sounds nice for me. But up until then, I was just using an AKG D5, like a little stage dynamic mic, vocal mic. I've got it here. And actually, that's in 58. And that was really cool. I enjoyed that because, I don't know, man, you get to a certain point, as if you have a semi-decent microphone and you've got the right tools and the knowledge, you can kind of make it sound pretty good regardless of what it is. What I've found with the SM7b is that it's way easier to make sound really nice.
Nice. So what other mics you got? That one you just mentioned is the AKG D5. What else you got?
Yeah. What have I got? I've got a Audio Technica AT4040, which which I use for my voiceover work. I've got 58, 57. I think we've got another AKG kicking around somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
By the way,
I got a snowball.
A snowball? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I like the snowball.
Yeah. We've all recorded guests who have the old snowball.
Dude, that's how I when we moved back from England, I had nothing. All my stuff was coming over, being shipped over, and I had nothing. So I just went out and got a snowball, and it worked great. Again, if you kind of know what you're doing, you can make it sound pretty good. I recorded an audiobook with that thing.
Nice. Yeah, there you go.
Not really, but yeah.
I agree, man. You could any of those mics if you have the proper environment and you use it properly and you all that. You can do it well for sure. All right, so you got a bunch of mics and you're using the Universal Audio Apollo Twin. So the Apollo Twin is an awesome interface. I've never owned one. I've never owned anything from Apollo, but I always when I see the emails, I want to buy everything from them, but I don't. Yeah. So how do you like your Apollo Twin? Tell us about it.
Dude, yeah, I love it. I was using a DigiDesign 003 rack for quite a few years. And then as I left England, I sold everything and bought this Apollo Twin over there and had it shipped back. And I hadn't even used it. And then once it got here, I've been using it for everything every single day. And it's so transparent and it's just easy to use, and I love it. And it comes with, some stock Universal Audio plugins, which are all amazing. The console kind of workflow that you create with it is awesome. It's got optical inputs, so I've got a Focusrite Sapphire Pro, which is 26 in and out, and I have that hooked up through optical through the Apollo Twin, so it gives me 10 XLR inputs. Yeah, I honestly can't say enough good things about it. I recommend it to anyone, but it is kind of, a more sort of intermediate interface, because it costs quite a bit more than your entry level stuff. But it is super cool. Yeah, I love it.
That's cool. The plugins, and does it have the onboard processor for the plugin processing?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, man, it's sick. Honestly, I don't use that onboard processing that much, because it's got this whole it's got its own console, right? So you can I'm opening it right now and having a look, and you can add plugins to all of your channels and stuff, and it processes it before it gets to Pro Tools. But I usually just keep it raw unless I'm doing something particularly heavy, which is not very often.
And I know lots of folks who have the Universal Audio interfaces, they will use for the preamps on those interfaces, you can choose a classic Neve 1073 or from other classic preamps. Are you using one of the classic preamps?
Nah, I did. I've played around with a lot of them, but no, I've just found that I like it kind of just how it is, and I like to capture audio entirely raw. I don't like to color it until post. Nice. If you know what I mean, I guess I could spend time playing around getting the right sort of preamp sound for my mic and my environment, and then go with that all the time. But I like to play around with that stuff afterwards, generally.
Right. Yeah. That's a smart way to do it, because you just want to capture it clean, and then you still have all your options available to you.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can't really make a mistake because you've always got your clean audio.
Right. And of course, that doesn't mean that if you did use the Neve 1073 preamp that it would be bad or anything. It would just, it would be what it is. Add a little color or, whatever you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So the Sapphire Pro you mentioned. So you have a lot of inputs for that. Now, is that mostly for music, I'm guessing?
Yeah. I'm a drummer. And so slowly building up a sort of getting a decent studio back together. And I just got this recently, little Sapphire Pro. And it's just so I can record drums with really and record bands. Part of the podcast is going to be live music. So I wanted some more inputs.
Nice.
That's basically it. Yeah, so it works. It's pretty old, but it does have optical. And so, and the preamps are, they sound absolutely fine.
Wait, so you're gonna have live music on your podcast itself?
Yeah, man, that's the idea.
Cool.
And it's kind of like an Audio Tree Live sort of thing. A YouTube channel, Audio Tree.
No,
they have
I don't
live
know.
bands and they record them. It's really good. And they'll get bands into their own studio and they'll record them live and then broadcast on YouTube the mix, and it sounds amazing and it's a live performance and it's kind of like a one-off unique thing. So that's what I'm hoping to get with Musicians Map eventually. I'm still figuring it all out, because you need contracts and all kinds of things for that sort of setup.
That's a cool concept. So on this show, what's it called again?
Musicians Map.
Oh no, well that's your show. Musicians Map is your show, which we're definitely we're going to link to that in the show notes. But the other one you just mentioned,
Audio Tree Live.
Audio Tree Live. So is this what they do? They bring a band into the studio, get them all set up, mic everything, and also they probably do a bunch of rehearsals to get the mix on the console, and then when they're live, they play it live, and they just you hear a good mix live. Is that it?
Yeah, that's exactly it, man. It's like the NPR Tiny Desk setup. You know that?
Actually, no.
No?
Tiny Desk?
Okay, so yeah. So they get musicians into the NPR offices and get them to play like a stripped down kind of semi-acoustic set and just record them with a few microphones, and then they put that on their YouTube. So it's a really, really nice sounding, polished live performance. And the Audio Tree one is actually in a studio, so you get proper bands, full bands playing just how they normally would live, but everything sounds amazing.
Right. And it's literally live. It's not like, they're
live.
putting out a video afterwards, which they can, do a bunch of post-production on.
They put out the video afterwards, but it is live. Everything is just recorded live, and I assume they mix it in post.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they do mix it and put it out. So the final video is going to be a final mix. Which is cool. I was thinking they did it where it was like on a live stream where it was literally live, mixed live, and then that's it. That's the mix.
That would be cool. I'd like that a lot.
Yeah, that's oh my God. That's not easy.
No, super hard.
And
I don't even, I guess. Yeah.
If you were to do that, you would literally have to spend like probably 6 or 10 hours like beforehand getting all the sounds, rehearsing, like, you know what I mean? It's not like you just set up some instruments and go live and sounds great.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so then you got your Focusrite 2i2 into your MacBook Pro. So how's your MacBook Pro? Is that treating you well?
Yeah, up until today, it was treating me absolutely fine.
Well,
but yeah, dude, it's great. I've had it a couple of years, and I think it's the last one with the Thunderbolt input, which is why I got it for my Apollo, because it's Thunderbolt. And generally, it does everything that I ask of it very easily without complaint.
Nice.
And today was really the first time that I've had any issues with it.
Right. Yeah, which was a little weird. Well, and we should why don't you just give the overview of the issue we had today, just so people know.
Yeah. So I don't usually use Chrome, and I opened up and got on Squadcast with Chris and Pro Tools, because I always record double ender, as I'd recommend everyone does, and I recommend all my clients do. And my Pro Tools was just not happy to do it, and GarageBand wasn't even happy to do it. Just crashing constantly.
Right. So we ended up scrapping that and just relying on Squadcast.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I did hear some loud clicks throughout this recording, but that doesn't mean that those clicks are going to be on the Squadcast recording. So
yeah, and it seems to have stopped as well, like evened out a bit, I feel.
Okay, so you got the MacBook Pro, and all right, so we're going to get into your Pro Tools and all the plugins that you're using, but first, the headphones that you're using, the Audio-Technica ATH-M50x.
Yeah, they're cool.
Cool. Yeah, I know a bunch of people who use them. You like them?
Yeah, I like them. I just bought them a few years ago, just kind of because they're reasonably priced, and I thought I'd give them a go. I'd never tried anything by Audio-Technica before, and I bought the AT4040 at the same time. And I was just starting to do some audiobook recordings, and yeah, man, they're comfortable. I wear them all day, every day, and they kind of hold up pretty well. They give a decent representation, and they sound pretty flat, I guess. I'm really happy with them. I think if I was going to buy headphones again, I might try something else, but I would always recommend these ones for anyone that wants like a mid-range, decent quality headphone.
Okay, cool. And you got your monitors. You got the Yamaha HS7s.
Mm-hmm.
So that means it's a 7-inch woofer.
It does. I had the HS10s for years, and I was a big fan. And I've only just gotten these. Like I'm saying, I've only just gotten all of this stuff for everything, and it's because I've just come back to New Zealand after being overseas, and so I've just sort of building everything up again. So everything's pretty new. But the HS7s, yeah, I've had for 6 months or so, and I like them. They're good in my space. They're pretty flat. I can't really complain about them so far. I haven't mixed a whole lot of music on them, so I can't really speak to how good they are in that regard. But for just podcasting and monitoring and playing around, making sounds, yeah, they seem pretty cool.
And if you had to describe the difference between mixing music versus mixing a podcast episode on speakers, let's say, what would you say that difference is?
Well, man, there's the sonic range is so much more in music. In podcasting, we are dealing across the whole sort of frequency range, but it's not as dramatic. I guess when you're mixing music, there's just so much more to think about. There's so many instruments happening at the same time that finding a balance between them becomes a bit more difficult than 2 or 3 voices and a bit of an intro track.
Right. Yeah, totally. That makes sense. I mean, all the instruments are, in music, all the instruments are basically colliding with each other constantly. And you have to manage those overlaps of frequencies and resonances and all that. So it's much deeper experience.
Yeah, exactly. And quite often, instruments are taking up each other's space. Especially if you're playing, if it's a band situation, they're playing, multiple guitars, bass guitars and drums and keyboards, synths. They're all kind of occupying similar frequencies, and so you have to find a way to sort of separate them a little bit so that the listener can actually hear each of those instruments. Where in podcasting, you might have a couple of different types of voices, and maybe you'll EQ the voices slightly different depending on the voice so that they sit well together and, so they don't sort of clash with each other. But you're talking 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 instruments, if we're talking 3 or 4 voices. Whereas when you're mixing music, you're dealing with, as many as you can imagine, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, probably on the lower end is like 20 or 30.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, unless you're doing something super stripped down and acoustic, if you're doing a full production for a decent artist, then you're probably going to have quite a few tracks.
Right. I was actually thinking of the new Tool record because I really like the sound of that record, and it seems to me like they probably used some modern processors like plugins or even hardware to manage those frequencies that collide with each other and stuff like that and everything, because it sounds so full and present and huge and everything's in its own place. So I'd love to interview those guys one day, the producer and the band probably wouldn't know that much, but they would know some. But
yeah, I mean, that record sounds so amazing. That drum sound for me is almost perfect. It's just, it's next level.
Yeah, when I first heard it, like on one of the, I think it might be Invincible or whatever, but on several of the songs, his snare drum sounds pretty dry. Like there's almost no snare rattle at all.
Yeah, well, it's off. Yeah, he's got no snare wire on there at all.
Yeah, it's just a complete smack. There's no like snares rattling to give it that higher frequency attack, and like, I mean, there might be some of that, but and I originally was like, oh, that's a little too dry. But then you keep listening and you're like, no, that's tremendous.
Yeah, and he's got it tuned so high, right? Like he's got his snare tuned so high, so there's the pop and the crack is coming from that batter head, and you don't really need the bottom, the snare wire. And he's playing rototoms as well, and those are generally, there's so much attack there, so they're occupying sort of a whole lot of space that maybe would be dominated by that sort of crack of the snare wire and other applications.
Right. All right. So, Pro Tools, you're using Pro Tools 12? That's the one you're using?
Yeah, 12.
Okay. And how long you been using Pro Tools?
Forever. I started using Pro Tools when I started my degree. So we're talking 15, 16 years. I've been on Pro Tools. I can use a few other programs as well, but Pro Tools is my day-to-day. I feel like I know it inside out. Program. Yeah, sometimes I think I'll change and go to Reaper, but then I don't know, man. It's comfort, I can just do everything so quickly, and it does everything I need and more. So I've been really happy with Pro Tools, and for music production, that's what I've used it for predominantly, and so now it's easy to use.
Cool. And you're using RX7. You have the full standalone program?
Yep.
Okay.
I think I have standard. I don't have advanced.
Okay.
I don't need it, but yeah.
Yeah, I think advanced you get like maybe 6 more modules, but one of those 6 is actually loudness, which is what I use to set the final LUFS level of every episode I produce. So
sure. Yeah. I mean, I honestly don't even use the standalone editor. Every now and then, like I might bring something in if it's in a weird format because it has a good format conversion. But I mean, I have it sitting there, but I always just use the RX7s as plugins in Pro Tools.
Got it. So, all right, you mentioned the Spectral De-noise, and here's the thing. In RX7, there's a voice de-noise, and then there's a separate module called Spectral De-noise. And the voice de-noise is very simple. It's like, there's a learn button, so it'll scan the whole track and, basically learn the noise profile. And there's a few controls, the normal controls you would expect. But with the Spectral De-noise, it's a whole different animal. Like there's so many more controls. You can affect some frequencies and not others. So like, just maybe walk me through the details of how you use that Spectral De-noise processor.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, in terms, I do prefer it over the voice de-noise. I find the voice de-noise a bit clunky and not quite as smooth, I guess, as the Spectral De-noise. Let me see. I'm just going to open it up, see if I can make a bit more sense.
Oh, good. Yeah, and one other thing I've noticed about the Spectral De-noise is when I try to use, when I use the regular voice de-noise, I can remove 6 to 8 dB of noise, no problem. But when I use the Spectral De-noise, if I try to remove 6 or 8 dB, it just decimates the whole file. It's way too much. I can only remove 1.5 dB of noise or something.
Wow.
So different. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, dude. Okay, so I get my track, and I always ask my podcasters for some silence, and then I'll just capture as much silence as I can and just use the learn feature. I've got like a basic Spectral De-noise preset that I use that I've just sort of set up myself, and yeah, I'll just capture that noise and then I'll adjust it based on what it needs. Quite often, if it's a really noisy track, I'll use two instances of Spectral De-noise, one after the other, and capture the noise post the first one with the second, and just adjust the reduction in the threshold. But something that's quite interesting with the Spectral De-noise is the dynamic release in milliseconds. I like to have that like right down, and a really, really low knee as well. It makes it less obvious that it's happening. So I don't like to hear any of that stuff. I don't like to hear any of that noise reduction pumping. I don't like silence either, like entire silence on the tracks. I always like there to be a little bit of that sort of background noise.
Right. So that's the release time you were just talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That dynamic release.
Dynamic release. Yeah.
So I usually have that at 5 milliseconds.
5 milliseconds. Okay.
Yeah. Real quick.
Yeah. Because that's important. Because I guess the most important parts of the audio, and I guess when I say important, it's meaning the areas of the audio that can sound crappy if you do it wrong is probably when someone starts speaking and then when they stop speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
The attack and release of that or whatever. That's interesting. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and I don't know. I find it does an amazing job just killing that any noise, really. And even while people are talking, it's super smooth. I use it so much on pretty much everything, and yeah, it's the best investment.
Now, do you mess with the frequencies? Like, because I know like you can, on the visual display in the Spectral De-noise, you can actually move that line so it affects the higher frequencies more than the lower, or you can draw all kinds of curves and waves and stuff. Do you do any of that?
Nah.
Okay.
No, I don't do any of that.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I think there's on the top right, there's like a toggle button. It's like, I forget what it says. You have to click it, so then you'll see a horizontal line on the display.
Yeah.
And then you can start putting points on that line and dragging it up and down, and yeah.
Oh man, that's getting deep.
That's getting deep. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a faff.
All right, well there you go. So De-noise. I mean, look, De-noise is huge in the podcasting space because honestly, most people are not recording in quiet environments. So you got to use some De-noise a lot of the time, and so the tool that you use is important, and also your skill at using it is important. So.
It's true.
Okay, so let's move on then to the Waves EQ3.
Yeah.
Is that an older Waves EQ?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's just your stock standard Waves EQ that comes with Pro Tools. I can't remember who it was. Someone said to me years ago that that I should stop going out and trying to get all of the cool plugins to make my mixes sound better. That what I should do is focus on using the absolute stock standard plugins in Pro Tools, which is totally enough, to mix some music or mix a podcast or whatever. And then master those tools. And if you find any of them lacking, or you find you want to do something that these plugins can't do, then maybe go out and look for a specialist plugin to do that task. And honestly, I haven't ever gone past the EQ3. It sounds really good. It's totally transparent. The controls are everything that I need. It's a great little EQ, and I use it on every single episode, multiple instances of it. Yeah, it's awesome. It's even got a phase switcher. Yeah.
And how do you, when you use multiple instances, for what purpose are you doing that?
Well, I like to try and make each voice semi-flat. So I'm taking out a lot of the prominent frequencies, or the frequencies I don't like within a voice. So for every individual voice, I have a set preset high pass and low pass, but then I'll actually sweep the entire frequency spectrum, searching for anything that I don't like in an individual's voice, and then just notch that out a little bit. And so, for the first instance of the EQ, I might only sweep up to 250 hertz, and then I'll have another instance of the EQ where I'll notch out from 250 to 500, and then maybe another one, that's sort of in the higher range, maybe getting rid of some sibilance or something. But I'll use as many as I need to get rid of whatever I don't like, any ugly sounds in someone's voice.
Interesting. And you're also using Vocal Rider, which is becoming very popular now in the podcasting space.
It's all down to Tom Kelly and his influence over the podcast editors group as the Vocal Rider.
Yeah,
he put me onto it.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked back. As soon as I started using it, it just makes so much sense. And I don't use it all the time. Like, I don't really find that my voice needs it so much. I'm a pretty even speaker, but quite often I'll use it, on most people, I think.
Nice. All right, then the classic LA-2A Legacy compressor from you're using the Universal Audio version, which is so Waves has a version which is called the CLA-2A, which is Chris Lord Alge. So it's
I've used that before as well.
Oh, okay, so you've used both. So do you notice any difference, or do you have a preference?
I haven't been able to A/B them, but I did use the CLA-2A years ago when I had a different rig, and then between then I was just using the BF76, the standard Waves compressor, until I started using this Apollo Twin, and then got the Teletronix LA-2A, and it's fantastic. It's really, I use a couple of different compressors, but this is the one that I always turn to. Its algorithm is perfect for vocals. It's perfect for podcasting. And you've got a limiter option there as well. It's a simple interface. It's easy to use, and it sounds great.
And what's so cool is that, like, the LA-2A, all the plugins that model the LA-2A are, because the LA-2A is an optical compressor, and so it has quite a long attack time, or relatively long, I should say, relatively long attack time, but it really does work with vocals. Like, it just, something about optical compressors, and obviously not all of them, but a lot of them, they work really nice on vocals.
Yeah.
And recently I've been using the CLA-2A a lot more, but what I find sometimes is that for some voices, I actually want a faster attack, because some voices are, I don't know, it obviously it's a combination of the microphone and the person's voice, but sometimes it's too sharp, like there's too much attack, and it just pokes out so far. Like, I just want to crank my attack time down low to just catch all that and push it back.
Yeah, I understand.
And in those cases, I can't use the LA-2A, compressors, because you can't adjust the attack time. Yeah. But anyway, so then I usually use the CLA-76 or another compressor where I can adjust the attack time. Okay, you use the Waves de-esser. How often are you using de-essers? Like, on every voice or some?
Yeah, pretty much every voice. I just have it set as standard. I've got a different preset for female and male, and then I just go through and adjust. A really basic adjustment depending on who it is and how much I've EQ'd from their sibilance using the EQ. If they don't need it, then I won't have it. But it's in my signal chain as standard, and I'll just remove it if I don't want it. But most of the time, it's doing its job.
That's cool. So you must have it set, like the threshold set to where if a person's voice does not have a problem with sibilance, it probably won't even trigger the de-esser.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll even tell you what it is. My male de-esser is a high frequency de-esser. I've got the frequency at 6 kilohertz and minus 5 dB range. And so it's just really hitting the top of that, anything too bad. And my female de-esser is at 7 kilohertz, and I'm setting it at around about minus 8 dB. And yeah, as I said, if I don't feel like a person has a lot of sibilance or their setup, is kind of smooth, I'll bypass it and have a quick listen. And if it sounds fine, then I'll just remove it. Otherwise, it's kind of just there to catch anything that slips through the EQ.
Cool. And then sometimes you use the mouth declick in RX.
Always, for everybody.
Oh, really?
It's a standard. Yeah, man. Yeah, mouth declicker is standard.
It's so funny how once you hear that, like once you hear nasty mouth clicks, like you can't handle it ever again.
So I remember distinctly the moment that I got RX6, and I'd been recording audiobooks, and mouth clicks when you're an audiobook narrator they're a nightmare. And there's all these different tips and tricks on how to remove mouth clicks and what you should eat and hydration and all this stuff. And I just struggled, and then I got RX6 and just put on the mouth declicker, and I was like, that's it. It's all gone. It solved my entire problem. And so now I just have it on everything as standard because it just doesn't hurt.
Yeah, well, that's actually one concern I do have about RX's mouth declick is can it be overdone? Like if you overdid it, would you start removing like transients, like the T, like the front end of a T sound, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
think so. Yeah, totally. You would, but man, you'd have to really push it, and you'd have to have multiple instances of that plugin as well. Like I'm hitting my sensitivity is like around 5, and I'll frequency skew, depending on the person. But I guess you could start removing those transients, if you're cranking the sensitivity right up and putting a few different instances across, low frequency and high frequency, and yeah, I suppose you could.
Right. Yeah. So okay. So the sensitivity is from 0 to 10, and you usually have yours around 5. Is that right?
Yeah. Usually, and if there's a particular problem with someone, I might just put on another instance of mouth declick, following it with a similar sensitivity, rather than cranking up that sensitivity too much.
Okay. I think I normally keep my sensitivity a little bit lower than that. Like maybe I always try to bring it down as far as I can. Like that's the way I use the declick, the mouth declick.
Yeah.
Is I'll start low. I'll start at like 1, and then I'll slowly bring it up, and I'll be testing it on various mouth clicks, and then I'll just keep inching it up until it gets rid of the mouth clicks that are there, and then I'm like, okay, that's good. So usually mine, I think, ends up, I don't know, 2, 2.5, 3, sometimes up to 4, of course.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah, sweet.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's a really cool tool. I'm always worried. Well, if you go too far, then you'll mess up the audio. But if you don't go far enough, then there'll still be a bunch of clicks left over. So that's no good.
Yeah.
All right. Then you use a peak limiter, a Maxim peak limiter. What company makes that? Or is that Pro Tools?
That's Avid, yeah.
Oh, it's okay.
It's just a limiter. It's just a standard peak limiter. It does its job. It has built-in dithering, and it's really simple. It's just got a threshold and a ceiling. That's really it. It just does its job as a standard limiter for your master bus.
Okay, it's on the master bus. And so when you're setting the settings for your limiter, what do you go for? Do you go for a little bit of limiting or hardly any limiting? Do you look at actually what it is limiting?
Quite often I'll have 2 instances of Maxim, and one will be on the auxiliary bus, where I'm sending all of the voices to get them all at a similar level. It's my final kind of, so I'll squish the voices there. I'll be pushing the threshold down to about -6.5, and then with a -0.1 ceiling, just so that there's no actual clipping. And then that's going to the actual master output fader, which I'll have a 0 dB threshold, but I'll have -1.5 dB ceiling on that, so nothing's sneaking over that final true peak.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, that's cool that you have like a subgroup for the voices. I also do that too. Very handy.
Yeah, it is, and that means you can put the mouth declick on there. You can put the final limiter on there. Anything that if they both sound really sibilant, maybe you could put a little bit of a EQ on there. Just to sort of make them sound a bit more cohesive.
Right. Yeah, and when you do that, it's interesting. You have to. How do I want to say this? Because you're sending several different tracks to that one vocal subgroup. So if you change, like, you have to be careful of where, like, if you want to compress one person's voice more, you should probably go to that person's individual track and add more compression there. Or you could add more compression on the subgroup as well. But those two, doing it both of those ways will sound vastly different, actually. Right? Yeah, totally. I always have a individual. Each person should have their own compressor, right. and then it should all go to the subgroup for the to be limited together. Right. So yeah, I'm just sort of pointing that out for all the listeners who maybe don't use vocal subgroups and all that. That when you're routing audio this way, like you just have to be very clear on what you're doing where, and because for instance, let's say you have three voices and one of them is not loud enough, and you say, "Oh, I'm gonna make the voice louder," and you push up the vocal subgroup. Well, now you just pushed up the level of all three voices, right? So obviously you don't want to do that. So you got to know where to adjust things so it all ends up sounding fine. So anyway, it's kind of an obvious point. I just wanted to say it out loud, I guess.
Yeah, and to actually go off that a little bit, there's that perceived loudness as well as actual loudness. So you may think that a voice is quieter because of where they're speaking in the frequency range. Or even their mic setup or whatever you're doing in your EQ might be pushing their perceived loudness higher than the other people. So that's something else to look out for when you're just sort of increasing a particular channel strip or pushing the compressor louder to get more volume out of someone's voice. The problem could be remedied maybe in EQ.
Very good point. Very good point. And you just made me think of something else too, that one of the things that changes perceived loudness is someone's proximity to their microphone. Like if you have one guest who is right on top of their microphone, and then you have another guest who is like 2 feet away from a microphone, like you could level those to be about the same perceived loudness, but it's weird. It plays with your brain. Like the person who's closer to the mic, they just always sound a little closer and louder. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, totally.
It's perception, man. That's like, we're literally molding people's perceptions, right? That's what we're doing.
So much control, man.
Yes. So we should all of us podcast engineers should band together and put out audio so we can brainwash the masses for
Let's
money.
brainwash them into putting good sounding audio out. That'd be awesome.
All right,
it'd be difficult, but we could do it.
All right, we'll start there. Okay. All right, then so you got the limiters, then you're using the Youlean Loudness Meter too. So it's called Youlean. So it's like Youlean, Youlean, right?
One word. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I use it sometimes, not all the time. To get my actual loudness, I'm pretty sorted with my signal chain and where I'm setting my limiters. I kind of just know by now, kind of that I'm hitting the right sort of levels. And for usually what I'll do, rather than using the loudness meter, which maybe if I'm having trouble, I might just put that on there and just leave it open so I can kind of monitor as I'm going. But what happens is I'll get through the entire episode, finish my edit, and I'll export a 5-minute test of that episode. And I've got a little app called R128X-GUI. And what that does is it measures program loudness range, and true peak. And so I'll just drag that test file in there and just double check that I was right. And if I was wrong, I'll come back and make a tiny adjustment and then bounce my master.
Oh, that is cool, man. I like that a lot. Because
it's super handy.
Yeah, because you're doing it both ways. You're doing it by ear first, and then you're verifying it with, a very accurate plugin. I love that.
Yeah, it's cool, and also it helps. Like Pro Tools can be slow on the bounce sometimes, especially if you got 4 voices all using Spectral De-noise and declicks and all kinds of stuff, and you've got music and so maybe if you're bouncing an hour-long episode, that's time, man. It's time. Maybe you can do something else. But then if it's wrong, if you go and check your mix afterwards and it's wrong, then you're like, crap, I have to go and change it and then do it again. And fingers crossed, So this little app really saves a lot of time.
Yeah. So I end up doing that. Not all the time, not even half the time, but quite a few episodes. I will render the entire episode and I'll just go to check it and clean up things and then I'll realize that, this one voice, it should be a little louder. And then I'll go back and tweak it and re-render it from the DAW. One thing I do to take advantage of that time, like I'm actually doing other things at the same time. So
yeah, me too.
Right, multitasking. So I don't literally lose the time, but the way you're doing it is definitely a smarter way where you're gonna, only render a 5-minute piece and then check it. And then when you render the next one, that's good and it's done.
Yeah, because it takes 20 seconds that way, and then you're done. Really, yeah.
Totally. Yeah, and I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe you have an answer to this, but sometimes when I'm mixing an episode in Reaper and everything will sound good, and I will render it, and then I'll open the rendered file and I'll just start I'll spot check it, and it I don't know, it just sounds a little different, meaning one person's voice will just sound a little louder or a little softer, or it's very minute because I know I'm hearing in small steps, meaning if I push someone's voice up 0.1 dB, to me that makes a good difference. When I'm mixing, I will often just if I think someone should be a little louder, I'll push them up 0.1 dB. And if I think still a little louder, I'll push them up another 0.1. So those little moves, especially when you're mixing into a compressor and or limiter, those little moves actually make quite a difference. So it's just weird that when I'm hearing it from Reaper, it seems to sound fine, but then when I mix it, it sounds a little different. I don't know if that's just my ears or if it's somehow the way Reaper renders the file. I don't know.
Yeah, that's weird, man. I'm not sure. I've only used Reaper a handful of times, so.
Or it could be all in my head, right?
It could be.
It could be.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that.
Yeah, you never know.
Okay. All right, it's probably in my head. All right, I can hear everyone in their cars saying that it's me. All right, so the Pultec EQ you're using, is that a third-party plugin or is that in Pro Tools?
It's in Pro Tools, yeah. It's a universal audio again. It's one of the ones that come with the Apollo Twin.
Oh, okay. It's a UA, and then you're using the Softube saturation plugin. And by the way, this is the plugin that's free, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a free.
Yeah, it's free. Everyone should get it.
And I got it. I think I have it, or did I actually? I might have uninstalled it or something. But anyway, I got it and I tried it, and it's pretty cool. But again, saturation is one of those subtle things which technically you don't need for podcast production. And I already use a few other saturation plugins, so this wasn't one that I really needed. So, but you like it, right? It's a good plugin.
Yeah, it's fine. And I just got it for free just because I thought, hey, why not? And I've just been playing around with it, and for some voices, it sounds really nice. I'm talking, it's super subtle. You can't use a lot of it, but it's got a couple of options of the saturation that you can choose, and it's just one knob, less or more.
Right.
And I find that it adds body and a bit of warmth and sort of thickness to thinner voices. I sometimes will use it on my voice if I'm kind of a little bit under the weather, maybe like today, or use it on a couple of podcasters. It's on a couple of regular signal chains for some certain people.
Nice. And like you said, it is one knob. So, and I think the knob goes from 0 to 10. So how much do you normally add from 0 to 10? Because I know when I got it and tried it, I was trying obviously if you turn it up all the way, it's just distorted
crazy
to all hell.
Yeah.
You just,
yeah.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't even go above 2.
Okay. So you're sticking around 1 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Super subtle. Really, really just, minor adjustments.
That's cool. Yeah. Saturation is the bomb. It really is, right?
Yeah. Put it on a snare, man. Oh.
You know what? I need to incorporate a snare drum into my show.
Yes, you do.
Barry, you think I'll incorporate a snare drum into the show?
Nah, it ain't gonna happen.
Really?
No way.
Barry, I have a snare drum in the house, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I know you know that, but okay. So Kane Power, dude, this has been awesome. We're gonna all yell and scream at the end of this episode, but I just want to tell everyone again, your website is precisionpodcasting.com. Your show is called Musician's Map, which will be coming back sometime soon, but everyone should go find it and subscribe anyway. And if anyone's in New Zealand, including Heather Welch, hi Heather, we should have me and Heather have talked about, well, Heather has really talked about doing some sort of podcasting thing in New Zealand. And I'm like, I'll go. But
yeah,
I don't know who else.
Yeah, that should definitely happen. Look, man, I feel I'm so jealous of all of the cool podcast conventions that you guys have in the States. And I'm going to try and make it over next year or something, but it's a lot. So we need to start something in New Zealand. New Zealand podcasters unite.
Yeah, let's do it. And hey, by the way, maybe if we sort of commingle it with a Lord of the Rings conference, right?
Lord of the Rings podcast conference.
Something like that, because, hey, come to New Zealand, see the mountains where Lord of the Rings was filmed, right?
Yeah, why not?
Dude. And then we'll go on a mountain, remember where Gandalf was taking him through the mountain pass with 20 feet of snow? We'll actually go up there and someone will give a presentation about podcasting. It'd be great.
You can make a podcast up there, man, except for the wind, but hey.
Yeah.
De-noise. De-wind? Is there a de-wind?
At that point, geez. All right, well, Kane Power, thank you, brother, for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, great to have you. But you have to do one more thing for me, if you can, is we're all going to yell sound great at the end.
Yeah.
So if you're in your car, driving, wherever you are, all right, unless you're laying in bed at night and your spouse is asleep next to you, then don't yell. But everyone else, please yell. Okay? That's all I ask.
Okay.
All right, go. Sound great!
Yeah, oh, there's no activity, no giggle, no nothing.
You walk away from me well, and you can't play that part so well. Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control well. It's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, written down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react some everything. You change your attitude well. You say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. You gave up on me well. So change your